Welcome back, everybody, to the Open News Podcast. We have with us our special guest for today, Navi. He is a Kurdish Jew who grew up in Iran. And we also have our hosts, Amir and Jared.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
And we're all very excited to be here today. So, Navi, if you just want to tell us a little bit about, your background and we were speaking in Hebrew earlier. So do you currently live in Israel, or what has been your journey throughout the Middle East?
So I was born in Iran, and I was born in the Kurdish area of Iran. I grew up in the city of Kermanshah. And I'm a Kurdish Jew, and we immigrated to Israel when I was 10 years old in 2002.
Oh, wow, that's crazy. My mom has a similar story, I think, because she was also born in Tehran, and she left when she was 9, so during the revolution. Was your family I'm guessing your family, were they in Iran for the revolution? How did that go for them as Jews, as Kurds, as being this double minority in this country?
So my parents were in Iran during the revolution, and my mother told me a story that they wanted to immigrate to Israel when that happened. But in the last minute, my grandpa, he didn't want to, and he said, no, we will stay and everything will be okay. But it wasn't the era before the revolution and after the revolution wasn't the same. It was really hard after the revolution.
I know there's a lot of videos on like Al Jazeera and where they will say, oh, there's still some Jews in Iran, and they all are anti-Zionists, and they, do you think that and they have, Jewish Persians saying that on camera, but I always wondered, are they forced, or are they saying this to keep themselves safe, or are they really anti-Zionists?
So that's a good question. When I was in Iran, there was a ceremony every year in the same day. It was the day of the revolution, and we had a little ceremony in our Jewish community in the synagogue, and Iranian officials would come and watch us singing songs about the revolution and praising the revolution. And then I was a child. I didn't know what really happened. And a lot of years after that, my mother told me that we would give money to the Iranian officials. It was a bribe, and show our support to the revolution by doing this ceremony, so that they would leave us alone. The regime forces the Jews to support the revolution. It doesn't matter, not only the Jews, all the minorities. It doesn't matter if who you are or if you support it or not. You need to show your support. If not, you will have trouble.
Now, when you say trouble, one second, I just want to make sure our viewers are aware. When you say trouble, so people are aware. Obviously, Iran, can be quite a dangerous place. When you say trouble, does that mean that things can happen to your family, to your friends, to people that are close to you?
In Iran, those who oppose the government usually they get hanged in the street. They don't go for the family, but the men or the women will get hanged on the street or thrown in in the worst jail they can find. So if you don't show your support, it doesn't matter who you are. They will say you are anti-regime, you're anti-regime, and they will do whatever they want to you.
Yeah, terrible. And yeah, go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about, like, is this a situation that is difficult for, say, anyone who is not a part of the regime's like ideal Iranian, like say Sunni Kurds? Like, what's their situation there?
So the Sunnis in Iran, all the minorities in Iran, they are not persecuted, fully persecuted, let's say. They are a little bit persecuted, but not fully, because even the Iranian regime knows that they need to have some good level of life to not revolt against the regime. So but still, those who are Shia in Iran will have more rights than others. So the Sunnis feel less okay in Iran.
Yeah, but still some level of okay.
Yeah, and that's why the Shia, when it comes to Kurdish nationalism, then the Shia, they are less supportive of a Kurdish state because they feel safe. They are in a Shia majority country.
Yeah.
Shia Kurds?
The Sunni Kurds, they are more pro independence.
What about Jewish Kurds?
Well, the Jewish Kurds, we see ourselves as part of the Kurdish nation, and there is some level of support for the Kurdish independence, but not like the Sunnis or even the Shias. If the Shia have less desire to a Kurdish country, the Jews even less.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because you identify more with Israel than with Kurdish nationalism?
Yeah, when you have a few identities that are mixed in your life, one of them will prevail over the others. For Jews, it was Judaism. Usually, for people, the religion prevails over the others.
Okay.
I see. I was wondering, because I used to work with a Kurdish guy back in London, and he used to tell me that where he was from in Kurdistan, it was, they were under, other countries' regimes, but they pretty much had autonomy in the area that they were, and they were self-governing, basically.
Was he Iraqi? Iraqi Kurdistan?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was just wondering, in your area of Iran, did the Kurds have any form of autonomy, and was there connection with the Kurdish nation in Turkey, in Syria, in Iraq?
Well, in Iran, there is no autonomy for the Kurds. They are part of the Iranian country, and they are like everyone else. For the Kurdish are now in 4 different countries, so they have different levels of independence. In Syria, until recently, before the civil war, and in Iran, they are more assimilated to the country than other Kurds. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, like in Iranian Kurdistan, what's the condition of Kurdish culture and Kurdish language? Like, can you still hear Kurdish in the streets, or is it suppressed like it was in Turkey?
So for the Kurds in Iran, there is less discrimination towards them than in Turkey or even Iraq.
Yeah.
So they have freedom to speak the language, to do whatever they want, as long as they don't want to separate from the country and they are part of the country and they support the regime.
Okay.
Did you grow up speaking Farsi or Kurdish at home?
At home, we spoke both. My parents always were speaking Kurdish. My grandma even was speaking Kurdish and Aramaic. And me, I in the Kurdish areas of Iran, the schools, they teach in Farsi. Everything is Persian and Iranian. There's nothing about Kurds. So everything Kurdish you do at home. In school, you are Iranian. They teach you Persian, and speaking Kurdish only at home.
Yeah. I imagine that has to be a very weird situation for a lot of kids over there. Like, they can't speak the language that they speak with their parents at school. Like, is there an option to take classes in Kurdish, or are all classes have to be in Farsi?
It's not that there is a ban or something. You can speak Kurdish with anyone you want, even in school. There's no problem. But when you are studying in the classroom, the teacher will talk to you in Persian, in the Persian language, and all your books, everything is in Persian. So the early years of my life, and every Kurdish boy or girl is in Persian in Iran. Then you learn Kurdish from your parents in home.
Okay.
So you speak 4 languages, right? You speak Farsi, Kurdish, Hebrew, and English, or?
Yeah, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And which dialect of Kurdish do you speak? It's Kermanji in Iranian Kurdistan, right? I'm not too up to date with the divisions of Kurdish language.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit embarrassing, but I am not sure if it's Kurmanji or not. I think it's Sorani.
Oh, Surani.
Yeah, but I am not sure because in Iran we don't talk about the different dialects of Kurdish. Everything is Kurdish. It doesn't matter. So in Iran, you will hear only the Iranian dialect. So you think that this is the only Kurdish language.
So like if I showed you a video of somebody from like a Kurd from Syria speaking, would you be able to understand them?
Probably not.
Really?
Yeah.
What about someone from Iraq? Would you understand Iraqi Kurd?
So Iraqi Kurd, my father understands it. He knows the language of the Iraqi Kurds, but I don't. I learned only the Iranian dialect, the Sorani, and my father, he learned it from television because there is a lot of Kurdish channels that are Iraqi Kurdish channels. I don't think there is even one Irani Kurdish channel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And when we're talking about the Iranian Kurdish population, how many people are we talking about exactly?
I am not sure, but I think maybe 8 million
So that's
or
a
even
lot of
less.
people.
I don't know. I am not sure 100%. I don't want to say something that I am not sure 100%, but I know that the total population of Kurds is 30 to 45 million Kurds worldwide, and the majority of them are in Turkey. More than half of them are in Turkey. The other half are in Iran, Iraq, and Syria, and some in Armenia, and a lot in Sweden, I think.
Yeah,
sure.
now,
One of the things I was wondering about when your family left Iran at age 10, what was the catalyst for leaving? Why back in 2002?
So it wasn't like many other Jews around the Middle East. For us, some left, I think, for religion reasons, and we were a close Jewish community that we were very religious, and we were really close to each other. So when some left, everybody else after them said, yeah, I want to see them, so I am going to Israel. I am moving to Israel. And everyone wanted to see his brother, his sister, and that's what happened to us too. My mother's sister, she immigrated to Israel 4 years before us, and my mother talked to my father, and she said she wanted to go to Israel for better opportunities and to see her sister.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's really interesting that it was family ties and the connection to the community, which was finally, the catalyst to move. It's a little bit different to the Syrian Jewish community, but there are some parallels there, because when Syrian Jews left Aleppo and Damascus, they basically a lot went to Brooklyn and places like Mexico City, to communities that were already well established, and that's where they wanted to go. So I can understand the reasoning for wanting to come to Israel, but I can imagine from your parents' side, it's also a very hard thing to do, to pack up and leave a country where you were born, where your roots are, that you've lived for. I'm imagining centuries, right? It's a very long history over there, even from back in First Temple times, the first exile. So, how did your parents view the move, and how was the settling in period in Israel once you came over?
It was really hard for them. Until now, they are not really became Israelis. They are still Kurdish Iranian Jews in everything they do in their life. Because in Iran, the life is different. We had a big house, and my father had a store, and my mother wasn't working. She was at home. Here, it's very difficult. We have a small house. My mother, she must work, and my father cannot work at stores anymore. It's not easy like in Iran to open a store. In Iran, opening a store is really easy. Here in Israel, there's a lot of bureaucracy and God knows what.
Yeah,
Sure.
left over from the days when we were pretty much a socialist country, right?
Yeah, maybe, I think.
I'm curious, Navi, how much do you relate to, because obviously the Iranian Jewish community is very big in Israel, and it's also, I personally grew up in the American Iranian Jewish community. And do you consider yourself Persian at all, or Do you relate to that community, or do you feel so much more Kurdish, or is it like you feel both?
I feel both, but like I said, when you have different identities mixed into one, one of them will prevail over the others, or will be more dominant than the others. In Iran, it was the Persian identity, because they were the Iranian identity. Sorry, not the Persian. Persian is an ethnicity. So the Iranian identity was more dominant because in everything in our lives, in school and outside, everyone was talking Persian, and the government is pushing the Iranian identity, and that was the identity that prevailed and was more dominant. But when we came to Israel, we were the Persian identity was not there was nothing to push the Iranian identity. So the Kurdish and the Jewish identity got stronger than the Iranian.
Very interesting. That's very, very interesting. And I can relate to that because I'm Israeli and British, so I can definitely relate to one taking over the other and being of mixed identities. One of the things that I was really kind of curious about was your relationship as a child with other ethnicities and even people from the mainstream Iranian Persian community. What was it like growing up there, and what were the kind of interactions you had with people from other ethnicities?
Well, that's a little bit problematic because I was in Iran only for 10 years and I was a child. So when you are a child, there's a lot of things that you don't really understand.
Sure.
So our city of Kermanshah was majority Kurdish. So almost everyone I met was ethnically Kurdish.
I see.
So I met only one ethnically Persian. They were new in the neighborhood. 1 month before we came to Israel, they came to our neighborhood, and they were very anti-Semitic. And their son was chasing me in the school, and he was trying to beat me. Yeah.
Oh my God.
He was waiting outside of the school, and he beat me sometimes, and I came back bleeding.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that.
But it was the only time I experienced anti-Semitism.
Really? So so never from like your Kurdish neighbors. It was just that one Persian family that moved in.
Nothing. Even in Iran, alcohol is forbidden. So we needed to make our own alcohol, which is wine, for Shabbat. So the Iranians, the Kurdish Iranians that were Muslim, they were coming to us and asked us to give them wine because they liked it. They remembered the days before the revolution that they were free to drink how much they want, and they were asking us to give them, and they were drinking with us. Everything was fine.
Sure, that sounds good. Sounds nice. Sharing a nice bit of homemade wine. Sounds good. I was wondering as well if you could explain to our viewers a little bit more about the Kurdish culture, and in terms of like food, music, language, and maybe a little bit of history, because people aren't aware that the Kurds are very, very old, ancient peoples, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess this is the time to put the map.
Sure.
But
Let me get it.
yeah.
Do you know how to do it, Amir? You
I should
technophobe?
do.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is the maximalist map of the Kurdish. Some say it's less territory, some say it's more. But I grew up in the city of Kermanshah, like you see in the right side, in the bottom half. So that's where I was. The Kurds are between 4 countries right now: Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. So the Iranian Kurds are, like I said here, are more free than the others. The Kurds that had the roughest history and they had a lot of problems are the Turkish and the Iraqi Kurds. The Iraqis were massacred by Saddam Hussein, and the Turkish Kurds are very discriminated. They are not allowed even to speak Kurdish. They can get thrown to jail by speaking Kurdish.
Terrible.
And the history of the Kurds is that they are more than 1,000 years old nation, and they were always between the Ottomans and the Persians. And the Persians and the Ottomans, all the Kurdish history, if you Google it, you will see all their history is Persians used them or massacred them, and then the Ottomans used them or massacred the Kurds. And today, that's the map you see. That's where the Kurdish are. And I must say, there was a lot of ethnic cleansing of the Kurds over the years. So they were moved around. But for example, the Persian Empire, they put them on the border with the Ottoman Empire, so that they will suffer the problems of being sandwiched between 2 nations, and not ethnic Persians. And the Turks did the same. And there was even instances that the Kurds fought for the Persians or fought for the Turks. So that's small. That's the summary of the history of the Kurds for more than 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it seems to me like the Kurdish people have been done a great injustice over the history of time. And it raises a thought in my head, which is Kurdish independence. For me, a people of 30 to 45 million, as you said, a very proud ancient people, surely are deserving of a homeland which they can live in peace with and without being attacked from all sides. I was wondering, what's your take on Kurdish independence, and if that's something that's even possible? Like you said, being split up in so many different countries obviously complicates the issue.
Yeah. So the Kurdish independence was something that was not really present in a lot of years of the history of the Kurds until the Arab nationalism and the Turkish nationalism started. So they inspired the Kurds to have their own state too. So the Kurds, after World War I, they wanted a Kurdish home for themselves, and even in the agreements with the British and the French, they came to an agreement that there would be a Kurdish country, but the Turks did a lot of things and persuaded the British and the French to give up on the Kurdish country and divide their land between the countries that they wanted to create anyway. So majority of the land went to Turkey, more than half. Then Iraq got some peace, Syria, and Iran. Since then, wherever there was the biggest discrimination, there was Kurdish fighting for their independence. So it was in Iraq and Turkey. So in Turkey, even they founded the PKK, and they committed sometimes some human rights violation, and they committed some terrorist attacks. And in Iraq, the Kurds fought Saddam's forces because Saddam was very oppressive towards them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know the massacre of Halabja, for example. Saddam Hussein dropped gas on the Kurds, and they killed many Kurdish citizens of Iraq.
That was Saddam Hussein in what year? When was that?
1988. Entire city was killed by gas.
I remember the images actually of that time. It was absolutely horrific. There were bodies just laid out in the street. And yet the West did nothing. If I believe right, nothing happened. No consequences.
Well, in America recently, when Trump pulled out of Syria because there were some American troops protecting our Kurdish friends over there in Syria, and once he pulled out, there was a whole big discussion about betraying the Kurds, and people kept bringing up like Saddam gassing Kurds back in like the 80s and 90s, and there was like a whole big discussion. So at least in America, some people haven't forgotten what happened.
Yeah. The problem with I think the biggest problem today is that the Kurdish fight doesn't get much attention in the world.
Yeah, true.
Even though they are, I think, among the most discriminated people throughout the history.
Yeah.
So that's the problem today. And the fact that they are divided between 4 countries makes it even harder, because when one group of Kurds in one country want to establish a country and be independent, the 3 others will move in and do anything to stop it, to not inspire the Kurds in their country. So when there was a referendum a few years back in Iraqi Kurdistan, the biggest opposer, more than the Iraqis, were the Turkish government. They were really opposed because they have a lot of Kurds in Turkey, and if they get independence, Turkey will lose a lot of land.
Sure. That I know that there's a whole, big struggle going on over there, and I was wondering, where does it lead? Because for me, like I said before, the establishment of a Kurdish state to me seems like something very, very logical, considering the state of a lot of these countries that they're living in are in a very horrific have had a horrific time of it. Syria, Iraq, Iran, and I think Kurdish autonomy and a Kurdish state would be a great thing for peace in the Middle East. The question is, like you said, how do you get the word out there more when we see that people aren't really that aware of the whole Kurdish situation?
That's a great question. To be honest, I don't really know, but I can say what are the odds today for it to happen. It's very, very low, more than other nations want independence, because in Iraq, United States wants stability, so they prefer not to establish a country now. So in Turkey, they are really against it, and they discriminate against the Kurds. They do everything to erase Kurdish ethnicity, and even they passed a law to call. I don't know if it's a law, but they call Kurds mountain Turks to erase any Kurdish evidence. And in Iran, it won't happen because the country doesn't want to lose land. And in Syria, they had their chance, but because of Trump, who left them to their fate, they had to go back to Assad. So they can't now leave Assad, and Assad that will leave them open to Turkish attack. So today the odds are very low, unfortunately.
I see. Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, you're reading the geopolitical map very well there. I think it's a real shame. And I do think that it's something that needs to be looked into to the future. Maybe there's young Kurdish leaders out there that are willing to take it upon themselves, and there's people from the rest of the world that are willing to join in that fight for Kurdish independence and freedom. Because like you said, the Jewish people have suffered a hell of a lot throughout the history. So have many other peoples. But like you said, it doesn't seem like anyone has suffered as much as the Kurdish people have. Had a very, very rough time of it. One of the things that I kind of had on my mind when it came to growing up in Iran, I was wondering how you view, now that you've been in Israel for most of your life, how do you view the relationship that Israel has with Iran? And unfortunately, obviously, it's very tense at the moment. Things weren't always like that, of course. Back in the 50s and 60s, there were flights between Tel Aviv and Tehran, and Jews could actually go and visit places like the Grave of Esther and stuff. But we've gone a long way since then, unfortunately. I was wondering how you feel on, being tied to that country. How you feel?
So first, I will say that I visited the grave of Esther before we came to Israel.
Wow!
Yeah, on our way to Tehran airport, we went to Hamadan to go to the grave. We knew that it was our only opportunity, and so for a question, wait, I don't know how to say it in English.
So say it in Hebrew. Amir can translate.
No, I will say it in English. In Iran, the regime from all the other countries, in Iran, the regime is the most distant regime from the people. What I mean by that, they really don't care what the people want. So the Iranian people, they if you will go to Iran and meet Iranian people, you will see people that don't care about the things that the regime care right now. They don't care about Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They don't care about the West. They even want to have ties with the West. The regime is made up of something like 10 or 15% of fanatic Islamists who want to go to jihad and wars and go to war with the West. But vast majority, I can say maybe 90% of Iranians, they don't care about this. They don't want this. They want just have good relationships with all the countries in the world. They don't care about any conflicts.
I see.
One thing my mom always told me, and that I've heard from Persian people, is that actually, relative to the rest of the Middle East, the people in Iran are pretty secular, and historically always have been more secular than the rest of the Middle East in some ways, compared to maybe like the Arab countries. But their government is the thing that's very religious, and maybe some people in more rural areas or the villages, but people in the cities tend to be actually not super religious. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, that's really correct, and I have seen it throughout my life in Iran, and now that I'm outside, I see it on the Iranians. The like I said before, the regime is made up of maybe 10 or 15% of fanatic religious people. Majority of the country are not like that. They would like have a secular country and have a good life, and that's it.
Yeah. Do you see any opportunity or any chance at all in our lifetimes of, say, the regime falling? Because we hear that a lot in America, especially how like the Iranian regime's on its last legs, yada yada yada, but it never seems to change.
So that's a good question. Something that people need to understand when they encounter such things, when they see protests in Iran and journalists saying that the regime may fall and something like that, it's in reality it's really not that close, because the Iranian regime is built in a way that they are the most entrenched regime in the world. The country, the regime has two armies. One army that protects the country, and one bigger and stronger army and more well equipped army that that their biggest mission is to secure the regime. They will do anything that the regime won't fall. And the majority of the soldiers of this army is made up of that 10% that I told you that are really religiously fanatic. So this army even is under direct or control of the supreme leader, not the president or anyone else. They are under direct control of the supreme leader. So even if the people rise, there is a whole army that will do everything to stop them from doing anything to the regime.
I'm wondering, were Kurdish Jews drafted into the Iranian military? I know that when my family was leaving, that was a big problem, was that my uncle might be drafted. Is that still a thing that is going on in Iran?
Yeah, everyone is drafted. There's not, no one is singled out, but there's difference where you are drafted to the regular army or to the I don't know how to say it in English, the name of the other army, but in short it's called Sepah. So in that
maybe
army,
it's the Revolutionary Guards. Are you
yeah,
familiar
I
with
think that's it. It's the Revolutionary Guards.
Mhm.
That army is they check your background and they make sure you are from a family of religious fanatics, so that you will be loyal to that army.
Wow.
What was the
Scary.
fate? How did Kurdish Jews in Iran, what happened to them during the Iran-Iraq war? Were they forced to participate?
Yeah, 'cause y'all were right on the
Yeah,
border.
yeah, they were drafted. All the men were drafted. My father was in that war.
Oh,
We
wow.
Yeah, we even lost some Jewish Kurds. They died in the war, and today there's someone from our family in Iran that he lost both legs in that war,
Oh my
and
God. So good.
yeah. So the Kurd and the Jewish Kurd and all the Jews in Iran were participating in that war.
And was it like they supported the war, or was it they were just forced against their will?
It was mandatory draft, but they don't really were forced. They were forced like anyone else. Everyone was drafted. There was nothing special that they did to the Kurds. Everything was like everyone else, and yeah.
Wow. And what's the state of your area? I'm gonna butcher the name. Kermanshah. Is that how you say the town?
Yeah, Kermanshah. Yeah.
Kermanshah. So what is the state of Jewish life there now? Is there any Jewish life there, or is it all gone?
The when I was in Iran, in my
Mm-hmm.
early years of life, from what I can remember, we had a really big community of a Jewish community in Iran, and we were you can call us fanatics because we were really strictly religious, and
Mm-hmm.
we were our number one rule was not intermarrying with other religions. So
Sure.
from our big community, only one he married a Muslim woman, and the whole community made his life hell until he divorced her,
Wow.
Really?
and he married a Jewish woman. So we had a big community then, but now a lot of them left and came to Israel, or maybe some went to United States. Now
Mm-hmm.
in Kermanshah there is a small number of Jews left, and I think that maybe in 10, 20 years there won't be any Jews left in Kermanshah.
Really?
I have a question. So you said that you feel that they were fanatic. So I think a lot of American Jews and Ashkenazi Jews kind of don't understand how Judaism works still in the Middle East. Like, what does that mean? Are they wearing? Obviously, I'm guessing a lot of the things that what we would consider religious fanatics today of the Haredim is not going to be the same. Like, did they have payas in Kurdistan, or is that what was the level of religious observance, would you say?
So we were not 100% educated on Jewish law, but everything we knew, the whole community kept it 100%, and they forced everyone to keep that law. For example, I gave you the intermarriage. The intermarriage was very strictly kept, and everyone made sure that their Jewish neighbors and Jewish family will keep it.
What would like Shabbat look like for you guys?
So Shabbat, we were keeping some of the laws, but we didn't know the other laws. So everything we knew we kept. For example, we were not using fire during Shabbat. And in Shabbat in Iran, you go to school. You have a free day in Friday. It's not in Shabbat, it's Friday. So in Shabbat, sometimes I was buying. I was going to the store that was near my school, and I was buying sandwiches. And my mother told me, "That's it." One time, I told her that, and she said, "No, you won't buy anything in Shabbat. We don't buy anything in Shabbat. We don't use money." So, like you see, the fire and the money was the two laws that we really kept it, and we made sure that everyone will keep it.
Yeah, those were like the main important ones that you differentiated yourself from and said these are the ones we keep 100%. It's very, very interesting. Very interesting. We do have a question here from one of our dear friends, Adib. It's quite an interesting one. So I'll see if I can pull it up.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, there it is.
So, is the status of the Kurds in Turkey influenced by Erdogan, and would things change if Erdogan left office?
Yeah, it is. It is some. Well, the real answer to this question is yes and no, because yes, Erdogan is making it a lot harsher for the Turkish Kurds, but I am not sure that if anyone else would take his place, he won't do the same or even discriminate in the lower level than him, because in the end, anytime if the Kurds will get their independence, then Turkey will lose land, and I don't think any president would want that. Any president would allow that. So there needs to be something really dramatic needs to happen in the Middle East or in Turkey in special to Kurds get their independence.
I see. But how much are there Kurdish Turks? I mean, Kurds that live in Turkey, are they represented in government? Is there like political parties that can influence things, or are they pretty much discriminated against?
I imagine those would be banned.
No, there are political parties, but from what I know, I am not 100% sure. I think they were not part of the government. They were represented in the parliament, but they were never in the government.
I see.
Is there any in all the countries that split up Kurdistan, which one has would you think has the friendliest regime to Kurds?
Well, the Iranian.
Iranian.
Because even though they are discriminating against the Kurds, the level of discrimination is lower than any other country.
Even in, say, Iraq, where you guys even have your own army, the Peshmerga.
Well, today in Iraq they have semi-autonomy, but before that it was Saddam Hussein, and there was a lot of killing of Kurds and a lot of discrimination. But in Iran, throughout the years, Iran was in the history, from all these countries, the least discriminative towards the Kurds.
Interesting.
Okay, guys,
Very
I'm
interesting.
so sorry. I have to get going myself because I have class and I have to go to my classroom. But it was really lovely to meet you, Navi. I don't know if you guys are gonna keep staying on, but I really enjoyed this conversation and hope you have a wonderful evening. Bye.
Bye, and I get to class, young lady.
Take it easy. Bye, Anna. I was wondering.
I was just about to write down. Maybe we should start to wrap this up.
For sure. Although I do have a couple more questions, Navi. It really has been fascinating conversation. I was wondering, on your side, like, what's your kind of love for Kurdistan and the Kurdish people, separating your Judaism from it, separating the religion? And would you like to, are there special places in Kurdistan that you'd like to visit, or have you maybe visited? I don't know. And what's your hope for the future over there? Well,
for me, the Kurdish people have a special place in my heart. Always, they will have. And I really want to visit Iraqi Kurdistan.
Sure.
That's my dream.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's also a place I want to go to. Like, before I leave this earth, I want to go to Erbil so badly.
Yeah, I really want to see Erbil, but I don't think I can now. We have to wait.
Yeah.
Although we did have a guest on that did go. We had the Saluki. He's a travel blogger who went out there, and I think he spent a couple of weeks out in Iraqi Kurdistan, and he had a really, really lovely time.
Yeah.
Over there.
Hey, can I derail the conversation for just a second before we end this?
Yes.
So I see a lot of parallels between the Kurds and the Berbers, or the Tamazight, as I hear some of them prefer to be called rather than Berbers. Because, like, say in Morocco, the governments try really hard, like Morocco, Algeria, the governments try really hard to take away their identity, prevent them from speaking a language, tell them they're Arabs. Political parties aren't allowed to discuss Berber or Tamazight issues at all. And, I feel like there's a lot of similarities there between them and the Kurds, because they're living under, most, for two countries, Arab-dominated regimes, and another in a Persian and in a Turkish regime, who are trying very hard to, like, forcefully assimilate them, some more forcefully in other places. But I don't know, do you feel like any brotherhood or connection with Tamazight people of, like, the Maghreb?
Well, I don't have much knowledge about Berbers and their history, but from what you are saying, it looks like we have almost the same history. So today, I think the times that people will stop asking for independence is when the government opposes only separatism, but gives these minorities all their rights and let them do everything they want, speak their language. That's why the Iranians are less. They want less a Kurdish independence than, for example, Iraqi Kurd or Turkish Kurd. it's not that we don't want a independent country, but when you are discriminated really hard, you have more will to take measures for independence. Iranian Kurds, they want independence, but they are not discriminated like the other Kurds, so they have less will to take actions.
Okay.
Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I do hope the situation improves, and I guess we kind of have a not the same problem, but it's obviously a different problem. But we have issues over here in the Holy Land with our cousins, the Palestinians. But that's a whole nother episode, right, Navi?
Yeah.
I'm sure we could get into that, but the focus today was obviously Kurdish Jewry and Iran. And to be honest, it was a real pleasure to sit down with you tonight. I wish we had a bit more time, but we do have to wrap it up. I just want to thank you again, Navi, for coming on and telling your story, and hopefully educating a few of our viewers about some of the history and some of the things going on. So just thank you very much for your time, and you're welcome back anytime to come on and share some more wisdom with us.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to tell my story, and I will wrap it up with a joke.
Nice.
Kurdish Jew is someone who hit the jackpot of discrimination because you belong to the two nations that are mostly discriminated against in the world.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're not wrong. I'll give you that one. Like, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that's gotta suck.
You hit that big time gold bar jackpot. Ding 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 ding.
Gold bar jackpot of the jackboots kicking down your door.
Definitely. Well, look, I hope you can also hit some other jackpots that are money related instead. That could be nice as well.
Yeah. I hear the Powerball's reaching a 1 million jackpot again. But unfortunately, we can't talk about the jackpot because guess what, Amir? Guess what, Amir? The episode's over.
I don't know. Wait, Navi.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, you gotta give me a sec.
All right, fine. I rescind that clap.
Yeah, you gotta rescind that one. So yeah, Navi, take it easy. Thanks again for coming on. And Jared, now you're welcome to do your business.
Well, now I don't want to do it, except I do.